So I would like to go ahead and call the special joint meeting of the Rockland Fire Protection District Board of Trustees and the Citizens Review Committee to order at 6:01 p.m. We have Trustee Malinowski, Trustee Bernstein, Trustee Anderson. Carl Snoblin, our attorney, is not present today. And everyone else, if you could please just state your name so I can make sure we have you here, since I'm doing my best at taking minutes today. How come we don't do this? I know we have Mr. Johnson, Mr. Russ, Mr. Grum, Mr. Neasley. Gentlemen, I recognize the faces, but I'm sorry, I don't remember the names. Stein?
Yes.
And Spat? All right. Everyone, thank you very much. If we could please stand up for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And get to the heat turns off and gets freezing in here. All right, Trustee Bernstein, if you'd like to go ahead and take care of agenda item number 3, introduction of the committee members, or was your plan to have them introduce themselves?
Yeah, just we'll kind of go around, introduce yourselves, and just give a little bit of a background on yourself, please.
So, Mr. Johnson, if you don't mind.
Chris Johnson, live here in town. I actually started in Norwood back when I was 16 years old as a volunteer. I'm currently a career fireman, paramedic in a neighboring community. Again, I live in town with my wife and 4 kids. Work construction on my off days. And, I have not been a part of this organization 8 years, 9 years, so I was removed way before any changes, but just looking to do what I can to help the town again.
Appreciate that.
I'm Don Russ. I lived in the village of Lake Bluff for 20 years, and I've lived in Norwood for about 20 years now. And the first I heard about the fire department, I mean, I heard rumors, but the first I heard about anything concrete was when I was answering the mailbox one day, and my neighbors drove by and stopped and told me, "We don't have a fire department anymore." And that was when I became interested.
Very good.
Bill Neasley, a lifelong resident of Norwood. I was out of the department for 33 years and retired in 2010.
Welcome. I think once you guys should be once, I think we'll skip the board, right? Well, that's Carly. Treasurer.
I'm treasurer for the board. I'm a former trustee, and I've lived in Norwood for over 30 years.
I'm Heather Grown. My husband Roger is a lifer. We have 2 kids. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome.
Wayne Spath. I've lived here 26 years now. Wife and a daughter. Daughter's at college now. I've been a big supporter of the fire district here. So just do what I can.
Appreciate that.
Bill Stein. I lived in the area for 34 years, about 20 in Norwood, 14 in the village. Raised family up here. Got 1 left at home.
All right, well, I'd like to thank everyone here for coming, dedicating your time. I know everyone has a busy schedule, especially now. We're getting on to the holidays, so things are getting kind of hectic. I know me especially too. So thank you again for volunteering your time.
Thank you.
So hopefully we can, help, with your help, you guys can help us find some answers and to make this committee a success. I look forward to it. So we'll go to number 4 real quick, public comment. I'm sorry, Emil, so something else you had for number 3? Pretty good? Okay. Moving on to public comment. The district trustees allocate time for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the fire district trustees on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Would anyone like to take advantage of public comment? All right. So we'll go ahead and I'll let you, continue on with the agenda if you want.
Okay. So our mission statement. The Rockland Fire Protection District trustees and committee members will review the 3-year process of outsourcing financial impact, level of service, and disposition of assets. We have guiding principles that we would like everyone to follow as we go along. That is to take personal responsibility for the quality of our community, act with integrity, accountability, and in the best interest of all, be inclusive, welcoming, and open-minded, interact with respect and civility in all circumstances, embrace a positive, forward-looking orientation.
Has this always been the mission statement, or is this new? Is this something you've all come up with?
I actually reached out to Drew Urban from the Village of Lake Bluff. These are their guiding principles from the Beach Erosion Committee.
So this was not the guiding principles of our previous one?
No, he gave me permission to use these guiding principles for the committee, and I just modified it for like our mission statement.
I'm just asking because this is great, and I don't feel like it's ever been followed before, so we look forward to perhaps following a great mission statement. Thank you for creating it.
So that goes to number
Agenda item 6.
6. Scope of the Citizen Review Committee. So back in July at the board meeting, I asked the question where I could find copies of the studies or assessments of the process leading up to closing the Nolan Fire Department and outsourcing services. Former trustee Silverman responded with, there are no studies, they do not exist. The only document that we have is Brian's memorandum, which he wrote based on information obtained from the May 8th and 10th meetings where Chief Karani and Chief Siebert made a proposal to the residents. So we are going to review this process in 3 sections: financial, operations, and disposition of assets. Those will come later on. Tonight, we're just going to focus on the background of the former trustees, or former board of trustees. Oh, sorry, the resolution. That one was next, right?
That's number 7.
Did I skip one?
Go over the presentation discussion of city committee objectives.
Yeah, I just did.
Is this one?
Okay, so the resolution, this is just a legal document of the scope of the Citizens Review Committee. You don't really need to go over all of that right now.
So everyone here will probably have some homework reviewing this if you haven't seen this before or not. But pretty much these binders here will be what we're going to be working on. This is pretty much, I think, all the information that we have. Is that correct?
Is it okay if I jump in here? The Citizens
Absolutely.
Review Committee at the bottom of the page
Which
here.
one you got there?
Page 2 after the whole section 1, section 2, section 3, it says Citizen Review Committee. Is this what we're charged with? Is this what we're doing? This little statement, the purpose to research. Page 2 of 6. See where I'm
Oh,
at?
I see.
Very bottom. So it's like right here, this little guy, this little paragraph down
So
here.
it's in the resolution?
Yeah.
Yep, yep. That's correct?
So this is what we're charged with?
Yes. This is what we need your help with, or
Disposal
would like your help with.
of termination of district employees. We're gonna get into all this, right, because that's some scary language. And
It's scary language because the resolutions, penned in legalese.
Yeah. Right.
So, don't be intimidated by the verbiage.
Right. Okay. We're doing
Kind of
more.
sounds intimidating.
Well, termination of district employees, I'm not sure, is there anybody to be terminated anymore?
No,
Is
it's
there any more
reviewing.
personal property
It's reviewing the whole process.
the whole process.
of
what
how it
happened.
was done,
Yes.
with the purpose of,
So the district has those records because those records don't currently exist.
how can that be?
I'd love to know that. The current board does not have that answer. That's why everyone is here, I believe, to get some answers.
Okay. Is it, bottom line, are we looking to, what is our action? What is the thing that we want to do? someone?
I don't think we have those answers yet. I mean, without having this information, I don't think we can get to that point. I think that's a couple of steps.
Right. And then this video taping is for what purpose? Just records, or is this-
Since this meeting is a special meeting of the Board of Trustees, they're required.
To tape,
Mhm.
and so folks have access to this on the website and they can hear everything that we have to say.
Yes,
So no swearing.
ideally. Kind of goes back down to our, guiding principles of, what was the verbiage you
You
used?
gotta read the first big page. So
Yeah, yeah.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Kind of goes back to, interact with respect and civility in all circumstances.
That's right, exactly. But, and also for people who are joining us at home, they're not seeing what we're seeing, unless we make this available on the website.
Mhm.
So it really, we kind of had to explain the story as we go so that they can follow along too. So we have to kind of keep that in mind,
I
right?
believe, whatever documentation we go through or generate, is subject to being published.
It's also been FOIA, but.
Yeah, subject to FOIA and information like that, I don't
So
believe
if
there's an
somebody
issue.
wants to sit down and get this whole binder and look at it, God love them, they can.
Yes,
And they can just approach one of you and do.
absolutely, absolutely.
I have, they have it scanned and as we go through things, have it put up on the website.
Great, thank you. Thank you for indulging me.
No problem.
So we good to move on to number 8?
Believe so. Any other questions regarding the resolution? Okay.
Okay, so we are going to the background of the previous board, because this is the beginning, the start of the whole process, and I want to make sure everyone understands it and that we're all on the same page. So before we were able to vote for the trustees, they were appointed by the county board. Sandy Hart and Mike Rummel were the oversight of the appointments, and they gave recommendations, and Aaron Lawler made the final decision for the appointments. So this next one, this letter was sent out to residents telling them to vote no for the referendum. So in 2016, a referendum was passed to remove the ability for the county to make these appointments and allow the community to select trustees. The one thing that might be concerning about this letter is that it came from a resident and it has a fire department logo on it.
Want to jump in?
Sure.
A little bit of more background on, on the referendum itself. The trustees have been appointed, and they're appointed for almost all of the fire protection districts, certainly in the county and places in the state. But what had happened was in August of 2016, the state of Illinois passed a statute that gave Lake County, particularly the Lake County Board Chair, the right to arbitrarily forcibly consolidate a district, including a fire protection district. Aaron Lawler had made it very, very clear that he was looking to do consolidation, which I think most people agree is not a bad idea. The state of Illinois has so many little taxing districts that doing consolidation is not a bad idea. But he was looking for, I think, some political capital, looking for districts to do, and somehow he focused on the Rockland Fire Protection District. And I don't think he understood that it was an operating fire department, not a paper district like a number of the other districts around it. Tax money and then hire another fire department to do their fire protection. So once this became known that the state had given him the authority to forcibly do it without going to referendum or having, paying attention to what the citizens did, the one thing that the law allowed was that you could, it only applied to an appointed board. If you were an elected board, the county couldn't do it. So that's what drove the referendum, was to remove the ability for the county to arbitrarily dissolve the district. So that's why we have the logo.
Small point, I might add that the logo on this, I actually looked into it when this letter came out and I won't say filed a complaint, but looked into it with the county. And because it's just a generic fire department logo.
Right.
there's no
Yeah, Mulder's Cross.
There was no violation or anything they could do about it. It's just kind of a generic thing. So you and I can go out and use the same logo and not get, we're not in violation because it's not the official Rockland Fire Department, Fire District logo. So a lot of people don't realize it.
It protected a lot of things.
So on April 6th of 2016, an email was sent from Fire Chief Karani to Kevin Bowens, who at that time was the Libertyville Village Manager. And our board at that time, Ed Whitehead was president, Dan Rogers was secretary, and Carl Snowbloom was the treasurer. And keep in mind, at this point, at not any point in time was it ever discussed about outsourcing services, or was it approved to be discussed. So in his email, it states, Fire Services, this is the agenda. So it says, in anticipation of a May 1st Rockland Fire Board change, Libertyville may be approached by the Rockland Fire Protection District Norwood Fire Department to discuss a full consolidation of services. This is meant to be a heads up for possible future discussions between the Libertyville Fire Protection District and the Village of Libertyville and the Rockland Fire Protection District. So how would Chief Karani know about that there's going to be a board change? And further, why does he believe the RFPD will approach for a proposal to take over services? Especially if this was not approved to be discussed about. So in spring of 2016, a member of the Rockland Fire Protection District was expiring. Here is an email from Chief Karani to a citizen regarding the outsourcing of Norwood, which also states this matter had been discussed with Libertyville manager and they approved their support. Robert Grum was appointed in May of 2016. This email is in April of 2016. In the email it says from Karani to Mike, says, I have discussed this matter with Libertyville manager and the Libertyville Fire Protection District trustees. They have approved our full support should you need it. Now keep in mind that this was dated in April, almost 2 months before his appointment.
Also, he did not take office until July. There's a real problem with the timing here. The board, and I was a member of the board never discussed this at all. Apparently Bob acted on his own in working with Libertyville to begin negotiation on the contract before he was ever on the board.
So on April 19th, after the Bob Grum and Chief Karani meeting with Libertyville held a police and fire committee meeting. To the right is a picture of their item agenda. And keep in mind, once again, there have been no discussions by the current board for this. And this states, staff has prepared a proposal for fire and rescue services for the entire Norwood fire area. In anticipation of having the opportunity to provide all services to the RFPD, staff has also presented a draft of a proposal to the Libertyville Fire Protection District for review. With committee approval, staff would like to present this proposal to the Rockland Fire Protection District Board for consideration. We feel the opportunity is favorable at this time based on verbal feedback from the RFPD Board. How could there have been any verbal feedback if they never had any discussions about it?
And as of right now, the RFPD, well, Bob Grum is not a member of the board at this exact moment. He's still 8 weeks out, is that correct? Because he officially took his seat in the board on July 1st, 2016, is that correct? Okay.
July 18th.
July 18th.
It was July, but he was,
So it's
he was
exactly 2
appointed in
months.
May. So he was having these conversations as a private citizen.
Even prior to his appointment. Right.
Which, is there
which was a foregone conclusion.
is there anything against a private resident, I guess, talking to somebody, right? I mean,
Shouldn't
although his
misrepresent
intention,
themselves.
correct. So other than misrepresenting himself as maybe a member who holds decision-making abilities, there's nothing illegal against meeting with, I'm just asking for looking for clarification.
Yeah, there's nothing illegal. Again, a couple other facts that go around this is that at the time that Aaron Lawler, the chairman of the board, made the appointment, he publicly stated on record that, I'm not gonna quote it exactly right, but basically that he was putting Bob on this board to do away with the Rockland Fire Protection District, because he knew Bob could get the job done. Also, Ed Whitehead, it was Ed Whitehead's seat. Ed did reapply for his seat and was completely ignored.
Yeah, imagine him.
Is that a formal process or just a vote? Yes.
It's formal, there's an actual application, and you send a letter, an email to the county, and
And the board, the standing members of the board know that already, so
yes.
they're part of it.
Do we have documentation of, I see we have some documentation. We have documentation where Mr. Bob Grum represents himself as a current member or decision-making member of the Rockland Fire Protection Board.
No.
Okay. Is that able to become available? There's just no documentation of it?
There is no documentation of that. Again, in speculating, I don't think he did that, but that he was going to be, that he would be a board member,
Right.
and that that the board would wish to pursue this.
Right. And we know Bob Grum's history as a retired deputy chief of Lake Forest Fire Department of over 20 years, correct? Yeah. So he has a previously established relationship with neighboring fire organizations. We'd assume. We don't know that for sure, but I think it would be safe to assume.
Okay, so after the appointment, okay, so July 18th is when Bob Grum had his first meeting as a sworn trustee. He was asked the question, Mr. Grum, when did you have discussions with Chief Karani from Libertyville about contracting services? His response, I have only met with Chief Karani to discuss our ambulance service agreement. That was the extent of our discussion. So if that was the extent of their discussions, why in the email did he, make reference to calming any fears or fire responses?
No.
In violation of the trust. In 2016, Bob Grun had an unauthorized meeting with Libertyville. Carl was the president at the time, and the board had not authorized any member to discuss any consolidation. And this email confirms that Bob Grum was placed on the board to see the process through. He says, from Rich Karani, he says, Kevin, I met with trustee Bob Grum from the Rockland Fire Protection District today to discuss providing full service to the RFPD. Bob mentioned he was appointed by the county board to see this process through. When Bob Grum, he had notified Carl Soblin that I have a meeting to have coffee with Fire Chief Rich Karani, not to discuss business or a social gathering. He was not being transparent at all. And the discussions were about full closure and takeover of the Norwood Fire Department. And he was quoted saying, I was appointed by the county to see this process through.
Yes, in the email notifying myself and trustee Rogers that he was meeting with Chief Karani, he stated very, very clearly that it was purely social and that he was not representing the board. However, we later found out from documents from Libertyville Fire Department, obtained through FOIA, that meeting was an official meeting of Chief Karani, a representative of the board from the Libertyville Fire Protection District, as well as trustee Grum, and that the subject of the meeting was to discuss the contract. So he clearly had never been authorized to do so, and basically lied to the other trustees about the nature of the meeting.
Excellent. So this one is from, this was right before Dan was appointed to the board. Tim Hughes, he was a current sitting board member and his appointment was about to be up. He had emailed Mike Rummel asking for renewal for his position on the RFPD board. Now, if Mike Rummel, if he oversees the appointments, he should know who the board members are. But he had forwarded the email to Dan Rogers asking who this guy was. And Dan says, "This is the guy I want to replace with me. Please install me on the board. You can tell Whitehead simply you want me on the board. You can tell him you approached me and I accepted." So now Dan is asking to be placed on the board for the same position that Tim Hughes is asking for his renewal. And Dan Rogers, he is basically telling Mike Rummel how to lie to Ed Whitehead about him getting on the board. And he also, then email the next day, says, "I really feel I would do a good job and I can keep you and Aaron informed about the truth of what is going on." He is supposed to keep the residents of Knollwood and the sanctuary informed, not county board residents.
That was the 2014 appointment. In 2017, because in 2-year terms, Dan was up for reappointment. And at that time, because so much was going on, a number of citizens requested of Chairman Lawler that they not reappoint Dan, and we had another candidate. And I think all told, there's something like 50 emails to him requesting that, and he completely ignored that and reappointed Dan.
How did we
FOIA.
prove it to them?
Well, through FOIA, the Friends of the Rock and Fire Department have done a lot of research on this, that FOIA, a lot of documents from the county, from Libertyville, from Lake Forest, obviously from the Rock and Fire Protection District. One other thing I would also add too is about this time, and this is before Lake Forest really is involved in this at all technically. Lake Forest, so this would have been in the fall of 2017. Or 16. Lake Forest decided that any of the members of their public works staff, both fire and, or public works, fire and police, could no longer have secondary employment with the Rock and Fire Protection District. In anticipation of discussions of consolidation. So this was long before, this was still, everything was being focused on Libertyville, and Lake Forest was not part of this at all. I was able to have a meeting with the city manager and really talked about the hardship that would cause, and was able to get them to rescind that order. But for about a month, and we did lose a couple of people who had to resign before they were allowed to reinstate them. So again, there was big pressure that was being put on us. They were trying to remove some of our firefighting staff.
Libertyville was, they were supported by the IAFF as a pioneer program to fight secondary employment of full-time union firemen. So they had a bigger, it was a bigger target. Libertyville was the chess piece that went through that. I know
But they weren't just talking about firefighters on Lake Forest, they were talking about all employees.
all union firemen is across the board, but Libertyville was the one, was the organization which was pushed to make that.
But again, they weren't just talking about firefighters. I mean, my son works in the city of Forest. He was
forced to resign.
Well,
So-
I'm just saying that
I get what
I
you're
understand the pressure coming from Lake Forest on their city employees. Just know that
Right.
that the legwork was done from a higher up organization, with Libertyville being the representative of that decision.
So we come to,
Yep, yeah, that was in October of 16. when They did that, so.
so we come to proposal number 1 from the Libertyville Fire Department. This was back in July of 2016. The copy to the right shows a proposal for all EMS and fire services and eliminates the Norwood Fire Department. And the number for it is $378,172. Then we come to proposal number 2, which was in January of 2017. The second proposal was drafted, adding the Sheridan and dispatch assessment, which was not provided in the first proposal. This one goes up $20,000 to $398,000, $170 per year.
What is that? What's the share assessment?
Well, then the Sheridan eventually got annexed from Norwood to
What is it?
Libertyville.
Assisted
The senior
living.
care facility,
Ah,
right on
okay.
43.
Right. They, again, to touch on that issue, that was in our district. And it had the potential to run about somewhere between 100 and 300 ambulance calls a year. And we were paying under our ambulance contract per call. That would have bankrupted us.
Do we know how many responses the Norwood Fire Department had in 2016? Was that in this packet later on?
It will be later on.
Okay. And that's broken down with in-district and then out-of-district calls?
It will be.
Awesome. Thank you.
So now finally, in 2017, Dan Rogers was elected president.
Appointed.
Appointed, sorry,
Difference.
big difference.
He was elected by the board to be the president of the board. He was appointed.
Oh, sorry, elected president, but he was appointed to the board. Sorry, you're right, I'm wrong.
So in this letter to Chief Karani, Mr. Rogers is asking Libertyville to submit an all-inclusive proposal to take over all fire and EMS services. He also states that they will be soliciting a proposal from Lake Forest to compare services, response times, and costs. And this was the very first time that the board officially approved the solicit for proposals.
There was no RFP created, or is that later in this document? A request for proposal, you know,
I don't have a request. I can,
This letter constitutes,
this is their
That's it.
intent of an RFP, request for proposal?
yeah,
Okay.
there was no typical process was followed. It was very open-ended. Doug, tell us what you can do for us.
Okay.
then we come to proposal number 3. This is where Libertyville and Lake Forest decided to combine together and come up with a joint proposal that splits Norwood in half for services. This is the third proposal in just over a year, and the cost has now gone up to $530,000, $425. So that's, what, 3 proposals in less than a year?
Can you address, and I don't know, because I don't know, why is there such a significant cost increase here? It goes from mid-3s to almost 4 to over 5. I just don't understand how the numbers break down. How did that number get so inflated?
I think a big part of it was the first 2 proposals were for Libertyville to provide the service themselves. And I think their initial way that they looked at costing it out was that the Village of Libertyville has their own municipal fire department. The rest of the township, of Libertyville Township, that is Libertyville Fire Protection District is a paper district. They contract with the Village of Libertyville to provide all services. Libertyville has been servicing them for more than 50 years, so they know how to do this. So they were looking at, well, with the Sorokin Fire Protection District, they're this big, that's just adding them on to the Libertyville Fire Protection District. So they felt they had the model. And I think they just really looked at excuse me, what the tax rate was in the Libertyville Fire Protection District, the EAV year, and say, okay, that should be about what we should charge you. Then I think that the second one went up a bit because they realized they'd missed some things. And again, those were unsolicited proposals.
Right.
And they were just very draft proposals. And the second one, they realized they'd forgotten about dispatch. And they'd forgotten about a couple other things. When this one came along, this was after Lake Forest and Libertyville got together and sat down. And the reality is that Lake Forest really kind of took control over all the negotiations. And Bob Kiley really was now doing the calculations and figuring out what was, what they thought was best. And one of the things that they may have been thinking about was the Sheridan, but at that point, we reached an agreement with the Libertyville Fire Protection District that we would transfer the Sheridan back to them. In fact, it had been theirs, that property used to be theirs many, many, many years ago, because it's in their township. It's not in our township. So, I'm not sure what all went into the cost, but again, there's a long history. We used to have our ambulance contract with Lake Forest, and it had gotten so high that it was very unaffordable, and Libertyville was able to do it on a much better basis. And part of it was just the mechanism that they used to figure it out. They basically took the cost of running their fire department, divided it out by the number of calls, and then Lake Bluff was part of this, and then if we had a tenth of the total calls, we got a tenth of their costs. And, Lake Bluff got 2 or 3 tenths of it. So we weren't just paying for ambulance service, we were paying for the overhead of the fire department. And I'm feeling that probably got in here too, is that they're trying to not just really come up with a figure that is fair for the amount of service, but helps offset some of their expenses beyond just providing service.
Right, so we're paying somebody's salary, or someone's pension, or someone's.
Which is fine if that's if that is a part of, if that is a part of what's necessary to provide you with service.
The question is that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I also think it's important that you reference back to an email from Rich Karani on October 28th, and it says Bob seems to agree that Libertyville is in the best, if not only, position to make this type of consolidation move with RFPD. That was back October 28th of 2016. So, just in reading the transcripts, they already know that they have the upper hand, because as a district, right, we have 3 options: North Chicago, Libertyville, or Lake Forest. You can't call Joliet to provide fire service to our communities. It's pretty hamstring.
Lake Bluff.
Or Lake Bluff.
Yeah, one of the other things that, and I think is mentioned in here too, is with Libertyville and Lake Forest joining together, is that Libertyville realized that they couldn't handle it. That's a big part of it, because now they have the Sheridan, and they've got the other one on the Jamaican Gardens property. So again, they're looking at having, and both of those are serviced out of Station 3.
Are all in Quick City? That's video.
Oh,
Battery.
All right,
okay.
you may continue.
Yes, so Libertyville, I think they realized that they really did not have the capacity to provide the level of service that would be necessary. And so that's why they felt that a joint effort with Lake Forest would make that feasible.
Can I ask also why there wasn't a proposal here from Lake Bluff? Because I know there was some interest, but I'm not sure exactly how, I can't remember how that all played out.
Yes, when President Rogers sent out the letter, he did include Lake Bluff. And in February of, in February of 2018, Lake Bluff did submit a proposal proposal, for joint operations. That was the way it was that the Norwood Fire Department and the Lake Forest Fire Department would basically form a virtual single department and service both communities.
Right.
That was their proposal. The issue that needed to really be looked at though for that was ambulance service, because they were still getting their ambulance service from Lake Forest. So part of it was looking at whether it would be feasible to, between the two communities, the two fire departments, to operate an ambulance service. That there would be economies of scale to make that worthwhile. So that was part of their proposal.
Lakewell's proposal is in your book as well. It comes later on, it's part of your homework. Yeah, we'll get to that later. Okay, so next one. Okay, so President Rogers realizes that the proposal is too expensive. So he goes back to Chief Karani, basically asking to eliminate Lake Forest and go back to proposal number 1. And like what Carl was talking about, so Libertyville needs Lake Forest because Libertyville does not have sufficient personnel to cover the call volume of Norwood and could result in much longer response times for assistance. So Dan Rogers acknowledging the proposal is too expensive. In an email from Karani to Chris Clark, who is the new village manager for Libertyville, he says, Chris, I sent Bob Key to the Rockland meeting last night and also received a call from Dan Rogers, Rockland president, yesterday regarding the RFPD meeting. Dan wanted to give me a heads up on the meeting and what his report would be. Essentially, the RFPD said the proposal is too expensive. They cannot afford the proposal. So he's saying back in 2017 that 530 is going to be too expensive. We started off this new contract at 450 and now we're at 496. Next year we will be about 515. And he was saying that 530 is too expensive and we will be hitting that within basically 2 years. What?
Sorry.
Anything to that, Carl?
Well, yes.
Any flip on the numbers?
No. So yeah, I think it was right around January 5th of 2018 that happened. On January 25th, at the request of Libertyville and Lake Forest, we had a special meeting, strictly to go into executive session. Because of the Open Meetings Act, the reasons you can go into executive session are extremely limited and very well documented as to what they are. One of them has to do, as you can understand, is to talk about job performance related issues and possible discipline. And I think that was the excuse that was used, it was job related, but clearly the meeting was to talk about the contract and to negotiate a lower price. In fact, Dan, even in that meeting, you have the audio for this meeting, Dan at one point even says, this is the number, if you make this number up, we'll contract with you. Our attorney repeatedly said, this is unacceptable, we can't be doing this. Shortly after it got FOIA'd, and the Attorney General investigated it, and a couple of weeks later, on the 2nd of February, the Attorney General's office found that the meeting was improper and an absolute violation of the Open Meetings Act. That was what was going on behind closed doors.
Is that documented in any place in our notes?
I don't know if it is not. If the Attorney General is finding that in the complaint, that's in the.
And where did
Oh,
that go from
it's
there?
not in here.
So
It's
after-
basically a hand slap, I mean, in terms of
Nothing.
legality, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Attorney General ruled it wasn't, and basically said, you have to release the minutes, you have to release the audio. Because typically for executive sessions, you keep that closed until such time as the board votes that it no longer needs to be kept. But the Attorney General required it to be released, basically said that it was a violation but there was no legal action taken.
But we have documentation that says the Attorney General has ruled this a
Yes.
violation. Okay. So they can see the raw information, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we can tell anybody we want, but until they see, I guess, hard proof for them to realize or draw their own conclusion.
Okay, potential inappropriate county influence. So on March 19th, President Rogers was going to meet with Lake Bluff about a proposal from them. But Mr. Rogers invited 2 Lake County board members to attend his meeting with Lake Bluff to discuss their proposal. These 2 county board members were not in attendance at the Libertyville Lake Forest proposal meetings. Now, Mike Rummel, he attended the one in Lake Bluff. Sandy Hart did not. Sandy Hart declined. Her email to Dan Rogers was, "It is inappropriate for me to attend. This is a meeting between 2 government entities of which we have no jurisdiction. Even though some residents in my district are also in the Rock and Fire Protection District, we have no oversight of this board except appointment authority."
So, why is this important information for us? The fact that Rumble went and she didn't, what is the implication?
He was inviting them to meet with Lake Bluff, but he didn't have them go to Lake Forest or Libertyville. And they can't, it's like she said, it's between 2 government entities in which we have no jurisdiction.
So,
And Mike Rummel went to
so he's
meeting
in
with Lake Bluff.
violation, right? For what she's saying. The mere fact that Rumble went.
Poor judgment.
I don't know if it's a violation,
I think the implication here is, say, that the county board member is getting involved in the business of the district, and that's inappropriate. Again, because, as you can see, the thing is that there is political pressures being put on from the chairman of the county board to make this district go away.
Sandy realized that she had no authority to be there and gracefully stepped out, but I think Rummel wanted to be able to at least report back to Longwood. I'm guessing that's just purely that's not.
Important points, these were sent out at the time. And just keep in mind that the board had never asked Chief Harlow to provide any documentation of level of service or finances, and he was never involved in any of the conversations with Lake Forest and Libertyville.
The fire chief was intentionally kept out of all discussions.
I don't need to read all of this. What's the last one?
Just a few more kind of timeline things about it from this point on up through. We never, Lake Bluff presented, on May 8th, Lake Bluff presented a proposal to public hearing. And then on May 10th, Libertyville Lake Forest presented a proposal to public hearing. So we had a couple hundred people, and each one of them, were able to make their case. Shortly thereafter, by May 13th, the district's attorneys reviewed all of the proposals. They looked at 3 things. They looked at the Lake Bluff proposal, they looked at the Libertyville Lake Forest proposal, and they looked at staying the course, continuing to operate a fire department that had been providing excellent service and was fiscally sound. The attorneys wrote up a lengthy appraisal and basically said that stay the course would probably be the best choice. Lake Bluff would be, Lake Bluff or going at least in that direction, starting to do more joint work with Lake Bluff, if not a full immediate joining. Second, in that they did not at all recommend that we go with Libertyville Lake Forest. They felt that was really not in our best interest. And apparently, the board did not, while they acknowledged the receipt of that, never really did anything with it.
That was our own legal counsel, correct?
That's our
Hired by the district.
Yes.
That's,
I remember.
And that's,
And so,
Just to clarify, it was the district's attorney,
the district's
paid
attorney
for by the
made
district,
that
to evaluate
recommendation
the
and review.
contracts and give their
It was basically
independent,
his
unbiased
opinion.
opinion.
But yeah, it was just an opinion though. There was no legal,
so that's in May.
did we get billed?
$300.
Lawyers, of course we did. Of course. In August, August 21st, at that point, the board had made it clear that they were actively pursuing the Libertyville Lake Forest, that they just basically sidelined Lake Bluff. Had asked for had been working with the attorneys and asking for more and more contract clarification and back and forth. The final contract was about ready in August, and then they had a big public hearing at Gorton to, again, get public input on accepting that contract.
did the board ever formally vote on the Lake Bluff proposal, or just was ignored completely?
It was ignored. As
Interesting.
Amy pointed out, one of the things that got this all started was her question about where's documentation. So there was no request for proposal. There were no studies done. A couple of times, in open meeting, and you can see it on the videos, asked, particularly, asked the other two trustees, have you done any response time studies? Have you done any projections on this? Have you done, and President Rogers turned to me and said, got nothing for you. And shortly thereafter, he stated, but my gut tells me this is the right thing to do. So, I come from a world, this is very, very difficult for me. I'm retired now, but I had 30 years in corporate environment where I had to do a lot of outsourcing, working at health insurance, large health insurance company in Lake Forest. And I would have been fired if I ever, if on my watch, and I'm working with vendors trying to do it, to have that lack of process, and just to come up and say, my gut tells me it's the right thing to do. So that is the reality. There is no documentation, there are no studies. From the financial perspective, Tammy Bryant, the treasurer at the time, was asked to do a projection. She did. She shared it with me. I gave her some feedback on a few things that I think needed to be dealt with, particularly around the building and the mortgage, and the fact that once the building's paid off, you lower the levy appropriately. You can't show in your projection that you're going to continue to take that money. And after you did that, and she was requested to only take it out through 10 years, and that was the proposal that she brought to the board, and the board, or said the analysis that she brought to the board, and the board accepted. There are two versions of it. One that shows a 0% increase in the levy each year, another that shows with 3%. The reality would likely be somewhere in between. And at the 0% levy, the district would be bankrupt in year 13. We would be in deficit spending since about year 7. And at 3%, it's about a break even. So that little bit of financial analysis is done, but I mean, say at that time, so much was unknown about what expenses would really be like. We knew the contract was a big thing, but there's still a whole lot of other things that go around that. So it was about as good as you could do at the time, but if you really looked at it, and again, President Rogers said, well, look, at the end of 10 years, we've got $260,000 left.
And that's after liquidating the assets, including the building.
Not including the building, but the other assets, yes. So it was reasonable, but it basically said, if you continue levying about the way you're levying, you'll break even. If you don't increase the levy, you are gonna go bankrupt. We had a fair surplus, but that surplus would be, starting in like year 7, you're spinning the surplus down. So that's the only piece of financial analysis that was done.
So they based all this on the fact that they thought they might go into bankruptcy
No.
in 7 to 10 years?
No, that's with the contract.
So that's where we're sitting right
No,
now.
13, year 13, we're bankrupt.
If you don't, if you.
We don't increase the levy.
If you don't
If you
increase the
don't-
levy,
if
right, if you
and
freeze the
increase
levy.
goes to a referendum,
Right.
another one.
It gets much more complicated that, and I did do an analysis that I think is in here.
It is.
That will come out later on, a year and a half later, that we knew a lot more. And it really basically shows, it's kind of a, and that comes to how this was priced. They knew exactly what our levy capability was. And basically, that's what they were gonna charge us, less a little bit for our overhead. So it's really a break-even kind of deal. When you look at it, I mean, the two scenarios really are, when you're operating your own fire department, you're at more financial risk. A truck can break, this can happen, that can happen. So from year over year, you have more variation than when you're doing this, which is, it's fixed, you know exactly what your
It's an
expenses
insurance
are gonna be.
policy.
But on the other hand, when you're operating a fire department, you have a lot more control. We have absolutely no control on this, we must pay this. Oftentimes, we would sit down each year on our budget with the chief and the deputy chiefs and say, okay, what's the state of the gear, how old's the truck, and, what do you need? And we say, and if everything went well, we come up with a balanced budget, if everything went well, that would be great. But if something unexpected came along, they do with something else, or defer something else. You had that control. So while you have more risk, more variability, you have more control. But both models are financially viable. I mean, this is not going to bankrupt us, but it's not going to save us any money either. The thing to keep in mind is the mortgage will be, having nothing to do with any of this, the mortgage is going to be paid off in 5 years. As soon as the mortgage is paid off, that's $90,000 we give back to the taxpayers. Obviously, because the building is an issue, we still don't know what we're going to do with it, and we won't really know the financial future until we have a firm handle on what's going to happen to the building and when.
So, I'll have so many questions.
Just night one, it's only night one.
Yeah, and this financial stuff is kind of more.
Well, and I think this is when we talk about the finances, this is the nut of what this is all about. This is what the conflict is about, is about the money, correct?
And performance, I mean, there's nothing in
The
the.
process.
What
with the
I don't
process.
understand here is, was our firehouse doing something wrong? Were we in financial ruin? Was the staff somehow causing harm to the community or each other? Was there something going wrong that we, as taxpayers and residents, were not aware of to cause us to sell our firehouse for any reason?
No, in fact, when you look at fire service, there's a lot of sharing and backing up, right? Because
Of
you can,
course.
no department can have enough capacity to handle everything that comes along. So we've always had agreements with Lake Forest, Libertyville, Lake Bluff.
Hey, listen,
Or
I work
Chicago.
in the park district, and when that alarm goes off, do you know how many trucks I see? Right? And now that this place is gone, do you know how long it takes until I see a truck now?
Yeah, that's part of it. But.
And it's not saying anything about Lake Bluff, because
No,
they're
but
good, but,
the nut of this is that, so you've got a geographic area, and it's serviced by a large geographic area, it's serviced by all these departments. The fact of the matter is, if you look at it, at 3 different levels, is do you have too many fire stations to service that area? The answer is yes, but that's kind of some costs they were built years ago and they're kind of there. Do you have too much equipment to service all these areas? The answer to that is probably yes, you do. You have more trucks than you really need. Do you have more people than you need? No, you don't have enough. That's the key. So when you look at the whole area, Norwood was a major, the Norwood Fire Department was a significant component. They serviced
Absolutely.
Lake Bluff, they serviced Lake Forest, they serviced Libertyville,
North Chicago.
North Chicago.
Yes.
And when you, because this agreement basically made them go away. So now you've taken that group of people, and it's people primarily, the equipment, station's kind of irrelevant. They could come out of Lake Bluff, they could, you can certainly do something like that. But now you've got, a whole battalion that doesn't exist anymore.
That's right,
And so all those other ones have to cover for that.
that's right.
So everybody hurts.
Suffers. Everybody
suffers.
Everybody suffers, do you hear? I just want you to know.
So that,
So
So
I'm
what
sorry,
is the
it
compelling
upsets me that
reason?
people still don't realize that this has happened.
so you look to what is the compelling reason why this happened? And everybody has to form their own opinion of it, but I can tell you that, there was no financial problems. There was a statement, many statements made by the people who supported it, that it would save money. And I'm telling you, it doesn't save money. It doesn't cost more money, but it doesn't save money. It's about a break even when you really look at it.
But
For now, but that's gonna continue 20 years down the road. It's gonna
Even
cost.
sooner- Even sooner than
Well,
that.
But how can you put a
Lake
price
Forest
tag on someone's
had their
head
finance stuff
that suffers
done.
because of this?
Okay, yeah.
It's a
And that's
human
why they
life
did it.
factor.
So, again, as you can see, that it's certainly, the breadcrumbs kind of point to it being a political decision that was not necessarily in the interest of the members of the taxpayers and the electors of this. One of the other things I did want to add here too is that after the referendum passed, unfortunately the timing was it was going to take 2 years before you could have the election for the board members. In January of 2018, the League of Women Voters issued a recommendation that the current board cease these outsourcing activities until the elected board could do so. In August of 2018, the Sanctuary Homeowners Association asked the district to please wait until after the election before they move forward with this. All of that was completely ignored. So again, it's kind of in my mind, that's a disregard for the democratic process.
And is any of that reflected in these notes anywhere in this book? Because that's important too. I mean, that is a community being ignored. I can get it for you.
The whole town was ignored.
Exactly.
I mean, not just the sanctuary, everybody.
Everybody, oh, absolutely. But here's two groups that in particular stood up and said something and were speaking for all of us, right? And it didn't matter what any of us thought about it either, did it? I know many of you came to meetings and tried to voice things. You all must be as frustrated as people who lost their jobs. So,
Why didn't we?
I mean, some of the behind the scenes stuff that was going on, talking to people without authorization and stuff. There was a court case, that, in Lake County here, I got myself, involved in it. I attached myself, when it kind of looked like it was gonna die. I tried to bring up, human, issues, that we're not getting the same kind of coverage that we were before. And unfortunately, just going with the law, it was kind of, they didn't do anything on the surface. I mean, it was illegal by the court's vision, so ultimately we were ruled against, well, about a year ago now, this January, I believe it was, when it all kind of fell apart. But the court kind of looked at it and said, well, they didn't do anything technically that was illegal. However, there's a lot of stuff that, I'll say, I wonder if the state's attorney would be interested in looking at, the happening political here, but, the state's attorney currently is a Republican. A lot of what was happening here was driven by Republicans. Rumor, and I don't have anything to substantiate at the moment, was that it was being driven by a bunch of Republicans from Lake Forest because they were looking for the money to, bolster their coffers because their pensions were having big issues. So the state's attorney, the Lake County state's attorney, not really interested in pursuing any of this because it's kind of going against his people. And I say this, it's my opinion, but, it's kind of a sad statement in that respect. I can't fault the judge when he was trying to be fair about the whole thing, but, did they do anything illegal? I'm not a lawyer, so I was up there trying to represent us and by myself. Lawyers are expensive, but unfortunately the district, and even Brian, the district's attorney at the time, later talked. He was so against the whole thing that his job was to represent the district.
Could we ever figure out who was holding the strings on DR? Because he made a statement on during an interview that he had been given orders 4 years, given an assignment 4 years prior to the closing, and he followed through with that. So who gave him those? Who made him do that? Was it the board or was it Lake Forest? You remember him making that statement?
Yeah, that statement was made at a county board meeting. Is that correct? Well, not Roger, but Grum. Yeah. The Grum statement was made at a county board meeting. I don't know why.
Roger made one on the news.
Yeah, I do
He
remember
made that
that.
statement that he'd been given this assignment 4 years prior by somebody, and he followed through with it. That was his big post.
Interesting if you could find that clip.
A year and a half ago, I don't know.
Okay.
It actually went around on the internet, so I can maybe try to backtrack.
You're here, no there, but we don't have that info.
Right.
Okay, so does that pretty much cover 8, or are we moving on with,
No,
that's it for this one? Okay, so moving on to 9.
Okay, well, before we move on to 9, I want everyone to, in front of your binder, you have a research assignment. So yes, you have homework, sorry. So after the background section in your book, we have a whole bunch of financial and contracts to look through. So I'd like you to read and review the Highwood outsourcing the Highland Park process proposal. Read and review the Libertyville Lake Forest proposal. Lake Bluff proposals are in there. 2018 Nolan Fire Department budget. Brian's assessment is in there as well. And then each of you should have a thumb drive in your binder.
Yes.
That is from the closed meeting of January that Carl was talking about, that I'd like everyone to listen to. And really listen to it and write down anything else, questions,
About how long?
concerns. Just a little over an hour.
It's lengthy, so, take it in small bites.
So with all of this being said, when do you feel would be okay to have a next meeting?
I need at least a week.
Well, I mean, are you guys
Well, I mean,
okay with like a month apart?
I mean, I know the
But there's-
holidays are coming up, I mean, it's kind of a big thing, we tentatively, thought, or at least I tentatively thought, once, have meetings about a month apart or so.
Or if you need a little bit longer,
But
whatever,
being-
there is
Yeah,
a lot
Christmas
of
and-
reading and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of material, being also, we have Christmas coming up, the holidays and the new year. If the committee thinks, a little extra time would be necessary to review it, by all means, let us know, and we'll schedule a meeting accordingly.
I'll, my 2 cents, and I'm pretty much free at any time, but I'm gonna say because of the holidays, instead of having it a month from today, maybe a month and a week, or,
Yes.
towards
in
Second or third
January.
week in January,
Yeah, versus
third week in
the
January.
15th of January, maybe move it to the 22nd or something.
Is everybody okay with the same, like Monday at 6 o'clock? Does that work for everybody?
Monday's work.
Does 6 o'clock work for everybody?
Hey, we all make sacrifices.
Okay, well, we have our meeting on the 13th.
We were meeting on the 13th, yeah, so we got 16th, so then Monday,
So
the
either
20th.
or the 20th of January? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Martin Luther King Day, I don't know if that affects anyone,
Yeah.
job-wise or anything, or for any reason.
Kids are off.
So, January 20th, 6 o'clock, January 20th of 2020.
Wow.
So 01/20/20/20, 6 p.m. If anything changes or if anyone wants any more time or anything. So Carl, I know this is probably a legal question, I didn't think we'd have any. Can the committee themselves talk amongst themselves? Does that violate anything?
Oh, certainly, as long as it's
What?
one less than a quorum.
One less than a quorum, okay.
So 3 or 4, yeah,
Okay.
three people could certainly talk.
Yeah,
I
so,
suspect it's
so as
not
long
a-
as not everyone's copied on the same email and you're talking about, committee business, 3, 4 of you can talk, to each other at a time. Any sort of scheduling questions or conflicts or anything like that, you can please direct them to any member of the board, but more than likely, trustee Bernstein. She'll be, scheduling the meeting and then coming up with the agenda. Any agenda items you'd like to bring up, please again, send them to trustee Bernstein.
If anybody has any trouble with the audio, with the thumb drives, let me know.
And does everybody have each of the trustees, the Rockland trustees, contact information, or at least at a minimum email? I don't know if that's in here, Amy, do you
No,
have
I
that
don't
or
see it
no?
anywhere.
No? Okay,
I admit.
it's all right. Well, you would probably be the main contact, or do you want, so it's A. Bernstein, can you spell that out for me? It's on your email?
It's A Bernstein, ABERNSTEIN @noldfire.com.
Alright. See, I don't have that.
I gotta change them every time you leave.
Oh. Okay, alright, I think that about covers it for agenda 9. Anything else you wanted to bring up, or at least point of discussion? So, no? Dave, anything?
Can we ask questions? About the
Yeah.
Binder, sorry, it's a lot to take in,
Yeah.
and I'm just looking, do we have the firehouse reports that say, hey, like we mentioned before,
From Libertyville and,
from,
Lake Forest, or,
from say the past 5-7 years, let's say, in 2016, 2015, the Norwood Volunteer Fire Department, whatever it was, ran 400 calls, 200 EMS, 200 service-related, fire-related, whatever, breakdown of that, an actual firehouse report, what response times were with that.
But you want in district, you don't want total.
Well, I would love, I think as a committee, I think it'd be great for us to see both how many times the Norwood Volunteer Fire Department responded to its own district, and what those times were,
Into like, well,
over the, and into Lake Bluff or Lake Forest, cause I know there may have been, automatic response agreements to go to the hospital, or Norwood Country Club, or closer response areas, places, they went to Libertyville, responses, mutual aid, and how many times we had responded to, these districts that were coming to take them over. So what maybe what we saw in 2014, 15, 16, and then, how maybe those responses changed as, contracts were being, talked about, maybe Libertyville called less, called more, I don't know. But what's that, that's what I'd love to see, or maybe engage in a conversation, is to say, hey, Norwood ran 500 calls its last year of existence, and 210 of them were in its own district, and the remaining 290 were outside of our response area, mutual aid, automatic response to Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, Libertyville.
That was in somebody's presentation at the Gordon meeting.
So, I mean, I think that would be pretty interesting,
info we can pull
interesting
from.
topics, because is Lake, I guess a question I have, I'm assuming most of us know the answer, is Lake Forest responding to Lake Bluff the same as Liberty, or Norwood was?
No, I can tell you that because Lake Bluff, it's a lot of history here. If you go back, it has to do, just the evolution of volunteer fire departments.
Yes.
As you know, Chris, I mean, anybody, Norwood followed the traditional model a number of years ago, primarily being paid on call. It's a volunteer fire department. The people aren't here. The siren goes off, the blue lights go on, they come here, they get on the equipment, they go out, they get paid $5. Well, that just doesn't work much anymore.
Not when the economy contracts in
No.
06, 07, and people want to get paid to work.
So Norwood realized this, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, something like that, and moved to a paid on premise, where we actually put a staff in the building, most of the hours, and ultimately it was pretty much 7 by 24. And they were paid to be here for a 12-hour shift, right? But it's volunteer fire department, it's like $85, right? It's not like a career department. There's no pension overhang or anything like that. But Lake Bluff still really felt the old way was the right way. So we had a number of agreements with them. One, we serviced everything west of the tracks.
Correct. On an initial response.
Yes, on initial response. I mean, they didn't even
Just to
know.
clarify.
Right,
yeah.
right. So that's going to be carriageway, and then all the medical facilities, because, when people take blood and they pass out, you gotta get them in that
Fresno Central
no way. So we were doing a lot of service into Lake Bluff, but and again, the model was, in Lake Bluff, volunteers, they're not the guy who runs the hardware store, the guy who runs the gas station, and the guy who's the heating contractor anymore. These are people who they work downtown. So during the day, they can't respond. So we would respond during the day, but at night, they were pretty much full force, and so they would take a lot of our calls at night. So again, we
Assist
worked
or take the calls?
both. They could be primary. It really kind of depended. It would whether if we couldn't staff the station for them, they could they would do it. So we worked very closely with them and had a lot of agreements. But the reality there too is that from a purely financial perspective at that time, they weren't paying their fair share. And they realized that as this all started to, and were willing to start, actually helping pay for our staff.
Subsidize your staff.
Subsidize our staff. But when this all, when they realized what the handwriting was on the wall and we were going away, they changed. They went to paid on premise.
Right.
And they basically took all of our former firefighters are now working for Lake Bluff.
Right.
So that's what they've done. So is Lake Forest responding to them? No. I mean, ambulance, that's where they get their ambulance from, so yes.
Right.
But instead of where we used to go to them, they now service themselves because they are now,
Fully staffed as
They're fully
Norwood.
staffed.
Fully
They're
staffed
paid
as
on
Norwood was in 2017,
and earlier.
prior to its closing.
Yes. So, yeah, that's a definite, thing that was evolving that came into play through all of this.
So then, I guess we'd love to see what the responses was this past year, now that we have 1 year formal. How many calls, how many responses did Lake Forest have in their half of the district from the track south, and how many did Libertyville have?
We have that data.
First offset
Yeah.
versus
We
what the costs
should be
are.
able to get that through a FOIA.
Exactly, and
Oh,
that's what I'm saying, and I'd love to see
It's
these
on
hard.
it's on the website.
Should be on the website, the monthly report should be. on the
One of
website.
the things that's quite striking, certainly in the last 6 or 8 months, is that it was like 10-1.
For Lake Forest.
Lake Forest, yeah, nothing's going on the north side.
Yeah, what was it?
Is
I
the
thought
san-
one ambulance
Libertyville only
call.
had one call.
Is the sanctuary, Lake Bluff proper? Or
Yes,
is it
but they're
Libertyville?
serviced but under this contract.
They're
Yes.
serviced under the Libertyville contract?
Yes.
So yeah, Libertyville has, is doing 1 to 3 calls a month, and Lake Forest is doing 30.
And the financials are split 50-50, that's
That's,
correct?
that's what they tell us, but that's not our,
That's not you, you pay a
We
bill
pay,
and they divvy it up
they
how they
figure
see
it out,
fit.
right.
Okay.
I, a friend that works for Lake Forest Fire Department, and he was saying that the workload is skewed way toward Lake Forest right now, yet they're still splitting.
They have all the apartment buildings and they have all the commercial properties, right?
And they're just splitting the dollars 50/50.
So not only do you have the emergency responses, but you have the infrastructure work of fire prevention and bureau work, the legwork there.
Yep, and again, most of that is on the south side.
It's all on the south side, I believe, maybe a gas station.
One gas station.
I live on the north side.
And
All
again,
right.
and again, you know, one of the concerns with that model was that it provides two different levels of service. Libertyville is going to respond to the north side within 2 to 3 minutes.
Right.
Lake Forest is going to respond within 8 to 10 minutes because of their physical
To
location.
what sounds like 90% of the responses within the NOAA district are
And what used to
are,
be
are,
2 to 3
are 2 to 3 times longer than what north side's giving.
Right.
and responses used to be 2 to 3 minutes.
Because again, well, we didn't, you know, NOAA run ambulance service, but what that really meant was we had Rescue 44, which was fully outfitted. All of the vehicles were ALS, and all the crews had the appropriate medical setup. So if a medical call came in, they, you know,
The only service we couldn't do was transport.
we wouldn't transport, we would, you know, so we would, you know, if the ambulance was delayed in any way, we get there, we would render life-saving services, stabilize, and then assist when the ambulance came in and do transport. So, you really were getting the best of both worlds. You know, Libertyville's really, you know, with Station 3 used to be underutilized. And so you got tremendous service out of it, but that's no longer the case. They are fully utilized now. But if they're in quarters, and you're gonna call out Station 3, and they're there fast, they're good. Well, I do want to say that the service, the quality of the service for both is excellent.
Well, they're fantastic.
There's no doubt about it. It's the quantity, it's the, you know, capacity is the issue. It's not the quality. The quality's excellent. But before you had the ambulance responding and you had the rescue responding, 2 groups responding. Can't get much better than that. And that's what we had.
So, but we will, those numbers are in here, we will see them, the breakdown of what it was, and then
The call volumes and
Call
pretty much everything
volumes and
that's
all
what
that.
I don't believe that's in here.
it's not in here.
The Libertyville and Lake Bluff reports for probably at a minimum the past year, right?
Well, since
Should be online.
But it's probably important information that we
It
should
would be-
obtain the
Yes,
raw data
and
for people to see.
prior reports, I can take an action for the board to,
And maybe Rick's,
Mine
maybe Rick's
is-
that
I
responded.
might have those.
It'd be cool to look at, I mean, obviously.
Well,
we'll
this
talk about
lawsuit
it
that
later.
we were in, one of the reports was
well, you can hear about it.
FOIA information that, you know, response times and looking at all the numbers.
We had a consultant, not we, you had a consultant, actually put together a study on that.
Yes, so I
Pro
think
bono,
I still
so-
have it.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, firehouse reports will have rig numbers that go, right? I mean, whether it's,
Yeah, as long as we
Station
can still
3
pull
or
those
Station
reports.
2.
as long as we can still pull those reports.
I think
You might be able to
NEMSIS-
get them from
I
the
believe
state.
NEMSIS reports
There's
are out
file
for at least
so-
7 years.
Alright. Alright, very good. I will, yes?
Just, is there any concern about the fact that the state now has allocated money to improve the intersection of 176 and 4?
So that was covered at the last board meeting. It's not part of this agenda, but I can review it pretty quickly. IDOT is coming for the building. They're in the process of setting up surveyor, plat review, and then should be reaching out to the board by late spring of 2020 with an offer.
Okay.
So
we may be rid of this building faster than we thought. That was what I thought.
Potentially,
Has money actually been allocated for that?
Yes.
yes,
It has?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So last I
IDOT
heard, and
has-
then again, I'm
No,
not.
Yeah,
it's-
IDOT has
it's-
allocated.
Schedule.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah.
that they had allocated money for the studies, the surveying and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, money has been allocated for the acquisition of property in this area.
Okay.
For IDOT, yes, so I just recap previous board meeting, even though not part of this agenda, not part of the meeting, but, since the question came up. I reached out to IDOT, presented that information at the last meeting, pretty much the quick notes of it is just that you have, money allocated for properties in this area, was confirmed this is one of the affected properties. We won't know what their proposal is, until, like I said, late spring of 2020.
So they're going to invoke eminent domain.
But this is still considered a functioning fire department.
Yes.
Anything on the pension stuff that's going consolidation?
Bill 616?
I don't know what the number is.
No, that would probably be a legal question that I don't have the answer to.
Yeah, I mean,
but don't
our-
really-
That's the crux of it.
Yeah, our
Like
attorney
Forrest-
does keep us, keeps the board up
Very much.
to speed on any of changes or movements that are happening there, so, he does report on
Yeah, so
that.
those type of questions, you can do a regular board meeting, would be fantastic to ask. The attorney typically reports out that information when he has it, but I'm not up to date on it as far as what's going on now, or anything like that, so. All right, okay, so, before everyone packs up, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn our meeting today at 7:28 PM. All right, second, we'll just do a voice vote, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting,
Aye.
say aye. Aye, all opposed? No one ever opposes.
You want us to?
It'd make things interesting. Everybody, once again, thank you very much for volunteering your time. You have